Can you please tell us your name and give us the spelling, please?
Okay. I'm Janet Sima, S-I-M-A, and when I was a student at Kent State University, my last name was Cubic, which was C-U-B-I-C.
And Janet, what's your connection to Kent?
I was a student, a junior, when the May 4th event, the shootings occurred, and I volunteered for the Truth Tribunal simply because I knew a student named Terry Norman, who was a student, an informant for the police and FBI, and I just wanted to tell what I knew about him, to shed some light on that. And I think there is a big unanswered question about what role he may have played in the shootings.
Please share with us what you came to tell us.
Well, I met Terry when I was in a big lecture hall class, University Auditorium, and people tended to sit in the same places each day. And as I'd walk out of class, he had a camera around his neck, like a 35 millimeter, and he snapped some pictures of me. And I asked him why he was taking my picture, and he said that he was a photographer for the yearbook. And so now and then we talked to each other coming out of class. And I know that he did have the capacity to develop and enlarge his own black and white pictures, because he came over to the School of Music practice rooms, took pictures of me playing the piano, went to one of my concerts, and did develop and enlarge those pictures and gave them to me. One time we went driving around in his car, and he was known to carry a gun, but he told me he was a law enforcement student, and I guess I really was not, I was kind of ignorant of gun laws in those days. No one in my family was in law enforcement. Nobody I knew had a gun, so I just was unaware of what the laws would have been, that he would have been under 21 carrying a gun, and that was most likely illegal. So one night we did go driving around in his car, and he was talking about his guns and wanted to show me like how to shoot a gun. And we stopped at some field. I don't know where it was. It was probably between Kent and Akron. Got out of his car. Actually, he did shoot the gun a couple times, and explained to me about the recoil and different things that I knew nothing about. And so I just knew he had a gun. He had, I think, a rifle in the trunk, and I think at that time this handgun was in his glove compartment. But I did know him to also carry a gun in some sort of type of shoulder holster. And one odd thing about him was that he usually wore a sport coat, and I mean most students just didn't run around in a sport coat in those days. But it seemed like you could kind of hide a gun under a sport coat in the type of holster that he wore. And then this all took place, this class that I took was when I was a sophomore. So that was 1969, the year before the Kent State shootings. Let me make sure that I'm got it. 68. Okay, it was 1968. It was fall quarter when I was in this lecture class with him. And he asked me at some point if I wanted to go to Washington, D.C. with him for the day. There'd be no cost to me. It would be a covered expense, that he had to go there about an investigation he was working on. So I had never been to Washington, nor had I ever flown in a plane. I was from a big family, and our budgets were pretty limited. We didn't go on vacations. And so I just thought, well, this is like a great free opportunity, so why not? I want to go see the Washington monuments and all that. So on December 8th of 68, I did fly to Washington with Terry Norman. I'm not sure why he wanted me or wanted someone to accompany him. I don't know if he wanted to make it look like it wasn't a business trip, that it was a fun trip of some kind, and who he thought would be watching him. I don't know. I don't know exactly. But he did tell me he had a meeting and would have to leave me for a time to go to his meeting. So the first thing we did there, we walked around to all the monuments. He took my pictures in front of the monuments. I have those pictures in my scrapbook still. I kept a scrapbook. I actually have the plane ticket. And what was funny, when he showed me the plane ticket, it said Mrs. T. Norman. And he sort of sheepishly explained asked me if that was okay, because there was some very greatly discounted fare to take your wife along on a business trip. So me going as Mrs. T. Norman apparently saved a lot of money. I said it was okay, I'm from a family where you had to be thrifty. So that's what my plane ticket reads. So we walked around to the monuments. There really was not really that much time on a one-day trip like that. And at some point, he did leave me like in the vestibule of a public building and left for at least an hour and a half for his meeting. And I just waited there until he came back. And it was already like getting dark Sunday evening, and I think a lot of places then were probably closed. There wasn't that much sightseeing I could do by myself. So I just waited there till he came back, and we flew back to Cleveland. The significance of that, I think, is that it shows that he was working for the FBI, that he had to go to Washington for a meeting, and that was way before anyone would admit that he was working for the FBI. When the Kent State, excuse me, I want to just take a little sip of water. Excuse me. When the Kent State incident happened, Hoover, who was the director of the FBI, denied that he worked for them. And his subsequent replacement, the person that replaced Hoover, stated that, well, he started working for the FBI only a week before the Kent State shootings. Now, that probably was when he might have turned 21. They just didn't want to admit that they had an armed informant on campus who was underage. But I just believe that my trip to Washington shows something, that he was working for the FBI before that. So pretty much my contact with him was just for that quarter that I had the class with him. And my husband here, who talked before me, knew me at that time, and I had told him some things about Terry Norman, and he was kind of suspicious of him, and he just advised me to steer clear of him. Well, when the Kent State incident happened, I had just walked through the Commons area after my morning classes. I saw a very big crowd gathering. I really didn't want to stick around because it just looked like it could be trouble to me. And I walked to my off-campus housing, which is about a half block from front campus. I went home for lunch. So I was eating lunch when some of my housemates came running in saying that there was a shooting, some students had been shot, maybe some had been killed. They weren't sure, they were upset, crying, and it just seemed unreal that this would happen on a college campus. So I just stayed at the house there, and more of my housemates kept coming in with bits and pieces of information. And then we learned that campus was closed and we were all going to have to pack up and go home. And I did have a car, so I headed for home that day. Now, that evening on the news, there was a film clip that showed Terry Norman surrendering his gun, and I don't know if it was to campus police or the National Guard. And this is the film clip my husband referred to. The best film clip remains missing to this day, the one he actually saw, but my husband unearthed another one in an archives. And Terry Norman was saying something like, I had to shoot, they would have killed me. And he was referring to students who knew he was an informant, and he was taking their pictures. They did not want their pictures taken, and they were roughing him up, they were beating him up. And he shot his gun in the air to get rid of the student, to make the students, to scare him off so that they wouldn't be beating him up. This is what I allege that actually happened, is that he shot his gun in the air to get rid of the students who were beating on him, and that the guard heard those shots and somehow, whether by order or by instinct, turned and fired. And that's kind of what I think has been the part that has been covered up. And the reason I think it's been covered up is because everyone would, from let's say the president to the governor of Ohio to the campus president, or the university president, the campus police, the FBI, they would all be liable for million-dollar lawsuits for allowing this armed student, who probably was underage, running around with a gun, for hiring him, and so no one wanted to be liable for that. So it was easier to cover it up, and I just feel that. Terry Norman has never been made to give his account of the events, and I don't know how he possibly could have escaped that when he is in important photos, he is on film, shown surrendering his gun, how could he escape being questioned? Well, obviously somebody has to be protecting him, or he would not have escaped being questioned. So this is what I feel has been the cover-up at Kent State, and there are many others who think the same thing. My husband has made it his mission to try to let people know about this, people in government who might reopen the case and all, but it's to no one's political advantage to do so, and people just don't seem willing to do this. But I do have compassion for the families of those who lost a child here or had a child who was injured, and that's why I decided to talk about this today, because of my feelings of compassion. And I just think that the real truth can only be suppressed so long, and that the real truth just does tend to come out. And if you have any other questions, I mean, or if you want to see the plane ticket or anything like that, I can try to answer more questions or show you whatever you'd like.
Yeah, why don't you show us?
Okay. It's kind of a big, bulky scrapbook, but you know, I was keeping a scrapbook when I was a college student, and now these are just pictures that like Terry Norman took at my band concert and gave me enlargements of. And I have others of me playing the piano. So he did have the capability and would need that as an informant. And in order to identify people to the police or FBI, he would have to be able to provide pictures. And then this is my little trip to Washington. And it's kind of interesting that, you know, he took a lot of pictures of me, but I took none of him, because he really wasn't, you know, I just, you know, was excited to be there and look around at Washington, and, you know, I did take pictures of the monuments. I kept this little folder right here that held the plane ticket, and this is going to be hard to see, but it does say Mrs. T. Norman right there. Okay, so that was my plane ticket. You know, your first flight's exciting. What can I say? And you know, so I have pictures of the plane, and this was even the menu of what they served on the plane. I mean, you just don't get peanuts, you know, back then. You got a little more. So I have pictures of the clouds, pictures of the monuments, and none of that is, you know, particularly significant. Just wanted to show you that, you know, that I was there and that it happened. So.
Well, thank you so much for coming and talking to us about this today.
You're welcome.